They are to sit down comfortably, choose their own words. They're given bottled water in a comfortable setting. There is no threats. There is no coercion. Please tell us in your own words what happened.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
And the person says, well, where do I begin? Wherever you feel comfortable beginning. So we don't introduce any language to them or any words. Person writes out what happened. If we then take that statement and properly analyze it in a scientific method, meaning we expect the same results, putting in the same data repeatedly, the investigator can now know this person did it, when he did it, how he did it, why he did it.
When you were actually walking about, did you have any difficulty in distance judging? Because I think I heard you say once that near or far things looked quite near.
Well, tell us what happened and what happened next. Those are the two most powerful questions that we have. What happened next? Mm-hmm. It allows them to choose whatever they want to choose, and this is an important point. The average person has a vocabulary of about 20,000 words. When you ask someone what happened, they must go into that vocabulary, decide what words to use out of the 20,000, where to order them, what verb tenses to use, what pronouns to use, where to place each word next to each other to communicate in less than a microsecond of time. That is a process that, when disrupted by deception, we catch.
The Earth is quite beautiful from space and from the moon. It looks quite small and quite remote, but it's very blue and covered with white lace and of the clouds, and the continents are clearly seen, although they have very little color from that distance.
When someone uses an unnecessary word, unnecessary phrase, unnecessary detail, we deem it as doubly important. And when you ask them what happened, they must go into their memory, and when experiential memory speaks, it is very smooth and it goes in chronological order.
The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets.
A lie will disrupt that, and that causes internal stress. So people say, well, sociopaths don't feel stressed when they're lying. That's not true. They feel very stressed when they're lying because they don't want to be caught. So to disrupt that process is very stressful, and those that are really good at lying will use a substitute of words.
I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible.
So one of the things they'll do, instead of saying, I did not use performance-enhancing drugs, they say, I never used performance-enhancing drugs. I would never. And what they're doing is they're actually distancing themselves from an actual denial.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
We note and as pauses in the answer and seek to determine if this is a habit of speech or if it is a signal that the subject needs more time to consider his answer. That he began with "the sky is a deep black" indicates a willingness to answer the question directly. This is a somewhat lengthy answer which begins with 2 pauses for thought. The subject is presupposed to have been on the moon, something of great rarity at the time of this interview. The subject is intelligent and well trained. The expectation is that he will, according to the wording of the question, report what he himself saw. In any singular or exclusive event, there is an expectation of heightened importance, and when we speak from experiential memory, the structure of the sentence is reliable. Expected. Given the unique experience of being on the moon, we first note that the subject does not begin his answer with the pronoun I. In analysis, this reduces reliability. Given the context of unique experience, the pronoun I would have shown the psychological strength of experiential memory. Its absence is noted. Even with influence from the interviewer, the expectation is the experiential use of "I saw" in some part of the answer. Next, we note the use of passive voice with when viewed from the moon. Passive voice removes the subject himself personally from the statement. The use of passivity is found in concealing identity and/or responsibility in statements. For example, the gun went off is passive voice. If the subject was in a crowd and did not know who fired the gun, this would be appropriate. Here, the subject is describing a universal viewing and avoiding the singular experience that is expected. Next, when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the Moon. This is similar to the universal pronoun you that is used to describe a common experience. This leads to a question. Is viewing the space between the Earth and the Moon a common experience that listeners would readily relate to?
One more thing I'd like to ask you. You're one of the very, very few people, I think, whose opinion on this is really worth having. In fact, there are only 4 of you. Do you think, from your knowledge of the moon, having been there, that it is going to be possible in the foreseeable future to set up scientific bases there on anything like a large scale?